Your neediness is not emotion, it is a leash. The moment you crave approval, you surrender leverage. Kill the need, and control stops being manipulation. It becomes gravity. You've been trained to glorify your weakness. You call it passion, you call it love, you call it ambition, but underneath all of it is something far less noble: dependency. And dependency is leverage handed to someone else. You think your desire makes you powerful because it feels intense. Intensity is not power. Fire that cannot control its direction burns its own house down. When you want something too badly, a woman, status, validation, recognition, you shift the frame, you step forward, you lean in, you reveal hunger. And hunger is a tell. In war, the first army to show desperation loses negotiation power. In business, the party that needs the deal more concedes. In relationships, the one who fears loss first becomes compliant. This is not philosophy, this is structure. Neediness is not about emotion, it is about imbalance. The moment your internal state depends on an external response, you are no longer sovereign. You are reactive. You wait for texts, you monitor tone shifts, you replay conversations, you explain yourself too quickly, you invest before investment is earned. You believe you are being authentic. What you are actually being is transparent. Transparency without leverage is exposure. Understand this clearly. Control does not belong to the most expressive person. It belongs to the least dependent one. When you desire from a place of lack, you broadcast scarcity, and scarcity flips the hierarchy. The person who feels they can walk away holds gravity. The one who fears losing becomes orbiting matter. You have confused emotional openness with strength, but strength is containment. Strength is the ability to want without needing, to move without chasing, to invest without clinging. Most men never learn this because society rewards visible devotion and punishes detachment. You are told that showing more effort proves value, that pursuing harder proves confidence, that explaining yourself proves maturity. It does not. It proves attachment anxiety dressed as virtue. Neediness disguises itself as morality, loyalty, consistency, romantic persistence, but examine it closely and you'll find fear underneath. Fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough, fear of abandonment, and fear is readable. Humans are predators of subtlety. We scan for micro-signals of insecurity. We detect hesitation in tone. We sense overinvestment in effort. We observe who initiates more, who responds faster, who justifies more, who apologizes first. You cannot hide neediness. It leaks through pacing, through posture, through timing. The illusion is that desire creates attraction. In reality, unrestrained desire erodes it. The more someone senses that you require them to stabilize your emotional state, the less they feel compelled to secure you. Why? Because value is measured by replaceability. If your emotional balance collapses without someone's approval, you signal that your world revolves around them, and nothing that revolves commands. Control becomes easy only when you remove emotional dependency. Not because you manipulate, but because you no longer leak leverage. This is the lens shift. You are not here to eliminate desire. Desire is fuel, but fuel must be contained within structure. Without containment, it becomes explosion. The man who wants but does not need operates differently. He invests strategically. He withdraws without drama. He speaks without over-explaining. He listens without overreacting. His interest is calibrated, not poured out. And because of that, he becomes difficult to read. Difficulty creates tension. Tension creates respect. Respect creates leverage. Your problem has never been that you care too much. Your problem is that you care without discipline. Until you understand that neediness is a structural disadvantage, not a personality flaw, you will continue mistaking emotional intensity for strength. And strength is never loud hunger. It is controlled appetite. Every interaction is an exchange, not of feelings, of leverage. You were conditioned to see relationships as emotional experiences. That is naive. Beneath the language of love, loyalty, and connection sits a simpler law. Whoever needs less controls more. Control does not come from dominance displays. It comes from asymmetry of dependence. Imagine two men negotiating a contract. One has savings, options, and alternative offers. The other is behind on rent. Who dictates terms? Not the louder one, the freer one. Freedom is leverage. Neediness is the erosion of freedom. The moment you require a specific outcome to feel stable, you lower your negotiation position. If you need her approval, you filter your speech. If you need the deal, you concede faster. If you need validation, you overperform. Your behavior shifts subtly, but measurably. You respond faster than necessary. You reveal more than required. You reassure when not asked. You tolerate disrespect you would otherwise reject. This is the economics of need. The more emotionally invested you are in a specific response, the more behavioral concessions you make to secure it. And concessions compound. Attraction, respect, influence, these are not granted because you want them. They are granted when the other party senses you are not dependent on them for internal equilibrium. Internal equilibrium is power. When your emotional state is self-regulated, you are unpredictable in the right way. You do not chase. You do not panic at silence. You do not rush to repair tension. You observe. And observation slows the exchange down. Slowing down is control. Needy men accelerate. They escalate intensity prematurely. They confess too soon. They commit too early. They reveal insecurity disguised as virtue. They think intensity will secure attachment. In reality, intensity signals scarcity. Scarcity triggers caution, not admiration. There is a psychological principle at work. People value what appears selective. Selectivity requires restraint. Restraint requires independence. Independence requires reduced need. This is why emotional detachment is misinterpreted as confidence. It is not the absence of feeling. It is the absence of visible dependency. When someone senses that you can walk away without collapse, they recalibrate their behavior. They invest more carefully. They test less aggressively. They respect boundaries more consistently because the power dynamic has shifted. Neediness collapses the frame inward. You begin orienting around the other person's reactions. You monitor their mood. You adjust your tone to maintain approval. You sacrifice authenticity to avoid rejection. You become adaptable, but not sovereign. Sovereignty means your internal state is not rented out. Most men rent their stability to external validation. A compliment elevates them. A delayed reply destabilizes them. A shift in tone consumes them. That volatility exposes dependency. Dependency invites control from the outside. When someone knows they influence your emotional weather, they hold psychological leverage over you. Consciously or not, they understand you are invested beyond balance. And humans exploit imbalance. Not always maliciously, but instinctively. The economics are simple. The one who can leave has options. The one who has options negotiates. The one who negotiates sets terms. If you cannot emotionally tolerate loss, you cannot set terms. This is why killing neediness is not about becoming cold. It is about restoring optionality. Optionality is strength. You must build a life where your emotional stability is not contingent on a single person, outcome, or validation stream. That means multiple sources of meaning, multiple pursuits, multiple anchors. When your identity rests on one pillar, you guard it anxiously. When it rests on many, you move with calm precision. Calm precision is intimidating because it suggests you do not require compliance to remain stable. And that's when control becomes effortless. Not through force, through indifference to outcome. Outcome independence does not mean you do not prefer success. It means you are not psychologically enslaved by it. The enslaved always overpay. The free negotiate. If you understand this fully, you will stop asking, "How do I gain control?" You will ask, "Where am I dependent?" That question alone reveals the weak points in your structure. Remove the dependency.
Neediness rarely announces itself. It hides behind personality, behind "that's just how I am," behind humor, behind generosity, behind intensity. But patterns do not lie. There are archetypes of dependency, and if you are honest, you will recognize yourself in at least one of them. The first is the pleaser. He believes harmony equals safety. He avoids disagreement. He softens his opinions. He laughs too quickly. He says it's fine when it is not. He prioritizes being liked over being respected. His fear is rejection, so he trades authority for approval. The pleaser thinks kindness protects him. It does not. It signals negotiability. When you constantly accommodate, you teach people your boundaries are adjustable. Adjustable boundaries invite pressure. Pressure reveals hierarchy. The second archetype is the over-investor. He gives before earning reciprocity. He plans the dates, sends the long messages, initiates the deep talks, escalates emotional intensity prematurely. He mistakes effort for value. His fear is irrelevance, so he compensates with excess. But excess creates imbalance. When one side invests disproportionately, the other side relaxes. Human psychology seeks equilibrium. If you give too much, the other person gives less, not because they are cruel, but because they do not need to give more. Overinvestment reduces your perceived scarcity, and reduced scarcity lowers leverage. The third archetype is the explainer. He cannot tolerate misunderstanding. When tension arises, he rushes to clarify. When accused, he defends. When silence appears, he fills it. He confuses articulation with control. His fear is misinterpretation, but explanation under pressure reveals insecurity. The more you justify, the more you imply you are afraid of losing position. Silence, when controlled, signals confidence. Over-explanation signals dependency on being seen correctly. The powerful allow ambiguity. The needy correct perception obsessively. The fourth archetype is the saver. He is drawn to damaged dynamics, emotionally unavailable partners, chaotic environments, situations where he must prove his worth through rescue. He thrives on being needed because being needed feels like control. But this is inverted power. If your value depends on fixing someone, your relevance collapses when they stabilize or when they find someone else to fix them. The saver is addicted to conditional validation. He confuses indispensability with sovereignty. There are more subtle variants. The rapid responder, who cannot leave a message unanswered because delay feels like risk. The over-confessor, who reveals vulnerability too quickly to accelerate intimacy. The hyper-consistent, who believes unwavering availability proves strength. All of them share one trait. Their emotional state fluctuates based on external feedback. That fluctuation is readable. You think you hide it. You do not. It appears in your timing, in your tone shifts, in your micro-reactions, in how quickly you recalibrate after perceived tension. Humans are calibrated to detect imbalance. We subconsciously test for it. A delayed response, a subtle withdrawal,
a mild disagreement, and then we observe. Does he panic? Does he chase? Does he overcorrect? If yes, the hierarchy sets itself. Here is the brutal truth. Most people do not consciously decide to dominate you. They simply feel your dependency and respond accordingly. Neediness lowers perceived status, not because wanting is wrong, but because uncontrolled wanting suggests lack of alternatives, and lack of alternatives signals lower market value. This is not romantic language, it is selection language. You are being assessed constantly for stability, for restraint, for optionality. If your behavior communicates, "I cannot afford to lose you," the other person subconsciously hears, "I have fewer options than you," and hierarchy locks in. These archetypes are not personality traits. They are survival adaptations formed when approval equaled safety in your past. But survival strategies from adolescence become liabilities in adult power dynamics. If you do not identify your archetype, you will keep rationalizing it as virtue. Virtue without leverage is submission. Study your patterns clinically. Where do you overextend? Where do you rush? Where do you soothe prematurely? Where do you give before being asked? Those are your weak points, and weak points are exploited, not because the world is evil, but because power always flows towards stability. History does not reward the emotionally desperate, it rewards the restrained. Study power across empires, courts, corporations, and wars. The figures who shaped outcomes were rarely the loudest or the most expressive. They were the most contained, the least readable, the least dependent on immediate validation. Detachment is not cruelty, it is insulation. Predators in nature do not chase every movement. They conserve energy. They observe patterns. They strike when probability favors them. Hunger exists, but it is controlled. Humans operate the same way. The person who appears emotionally self-sufficient triggers a different psychological response. They are perceived as higher value, harder to access, more selective. Selectivity implies standards. Standards imply options. Options imply power. Now invert it. When someone senses that you are overly eager, overly available, overly invested, they feel your need. Even if they cannot articulate it consciously, they feel it. And once felt, it changes their behavior. They test you more. They delay responses. They introduce mild uncertainty. Not necessarily to manipulate you, but to measure you. Measurement is instinctual. In social hierarchies, humans constantly assess who reacts under pressure. A small withdrawal, a moment of silence, a subtle shift in tone. These are probes. If you tighten, if you rush to repair, if you over-clarify, you reveal dependency. Dependency reduces perceived threat, and when you are not perceived as a threat, you are not treated as a priority. The predator's advantage is simple. Emotional independence creates strategic unpredictability. When someone does not know how you will react, they respect the possibility of loss. When they know you will always pursue, always forgive, always explain, they relax. Relaxation reduces attraction, reduces urgency, reduces deference. Look at negotiation psychology. The party willing to walk away dictates terms, not because they shout, but because they are structurally free. Freedom creates gravity. Neediness creates orbit. Throughout history, rulers who displayed desperation lost influence. Leaders who oversought approval were undermined. Commanders who feared loss made reactive decisions. Reaction is weakness. The calm observer forces others into reaction, and reaction reveals hierarchy. Even in modern environments, corporate settings, dating markets, social circles, the principle remains intact. The individual whose mood is not easily swayed by approval or rejection is perceived as stable. Stability attracts alignment. Instability attracts control. If your emotional state rises and falls based on someone's text, attention, or praise, you have outsourced your nervous system to them. And when someone controls your nervous system, they control your behavior. Behavior is leverage. The predator understands this intuitively. They do not beg for reassurance. They do not chase clarity. They do not explain their value. They assume it. Assumption, when backed by restraint, creates pressure. Pressure causes the other party to lean in. Neediness relieves pressure. When you overinvest, you relieve the other person of uncertainty. You make the decision easy. You eliminate tension. But tension is the currency of desire and respect. Without tension, there is comfort. Comfort without earned investment breeds indifference. Predators maintain tension by controlling access, by limiting availability, by not over-communicating their internal state. This does not mean manipulation, it means discipline. Discipline of emotion, discipline of expression, discipline of response time. When you kill neediness, you stop trying to secure outcomes prematurely. You allow silence to exist. You allow space to create curiosity. You allow the other person to invest. Investment builds attachment. Chasing destroys it. The predator's advantage is not aggression. It is non-attachment to immediate reward. Delayed gratification amplifies perceived value. Immediate over-delivery reduces it. If you want control, you must first understand that the world does not operate on fairness, it operates on perception, and perception is shaped by who appears less dependent. Control becomes easy when
you do not eliminate neediness with emotion. You eliminate it with structure. This is surgery, not inspiration. First principle, delay your reactions. Reaction speed reveals dependency. When you respond instantly to tension, to silence, to provocation, you communicate urgency. Urgency implies fear of loss. Slow down. Not as a tactic, as a recalibration of control. When a message arrives, you do not owe immediacy. When tension appears, you do not rush to neutralize it. Sit with it. Observe your impulse to repair. That impulse is the addiction to approval surfacing. Starve it. Second principle, reduce unsolicited investment. Stop over-giving, stop over-explaining, stop over-planning. Investment should follow reciprocity, not precede it. If you give before value is demonstrated, you collapse polarity. You remove the other person's need to earn access. Access must be conditional, not verbally, behaviorally. You mirror effort. You escalate only when escalation is matched. You reveal depth only when depth is demonstrated. Restraint increases perceived rarity. Third principle, control emotional transparency. This does not mean suppressing emotion. It means filtering expression through discipline. You do not narrate every insecurity. You do not confess attraction prematurely. You do not expose fear in real time. The sovereign man processes internally before expressing externally. Emotional self-regulation creates unpredictability. Unpredictability creates respect. Fourth principle, expand your optionality. Neediness thrives in narrow worlds. If your identity, social circle, ambition, and stimulation revolve around one person or outcome, dependency becomes inevitable. Broaden your anchors. Multiple pursuits, multiple connections, multiple arenas of progress. When one pillar shakes, you remain upright. Optionality reduces pressure. Reduced pressure stabilizes behavior. Stabilized behavior increases leverage. Fifth principle, withdraw strategically. Withdrawal is not punishment, it is recalibration. If you sense imbalance, overinvestment from your side, complacency from theirs. You do not confront emotionally. You reduce availability. You become slightly less predictable, slightly less accessible, slightly less eager. This forces reevaluation. Humans value what feels scarce. If you are constantly present, your absence has no weight. Create weight. Sixth principle, detach from outcome, not intention. You can desire, you can pursue, but you do not hinge your self-worth on success. You act, you observe, you adjust. If it works, you proceed. If it fails, you redirect. No collapse, no dramatic interpretation, no internal spiraling. Outcome independence is psychological armor. Armor changes posture. Posture changes perception. Perception changes treatment. Finally, train emotional tolerance. Sit in uncertainty without seeking relief. Let silence exist without filling it. Let ambiguity breathe without demanding clarity. Every time you resist the urge to chase reassurance, you strengthen internal authority. Authority begins inside. Most men crumble because they cannot tolerate the discomfort of not knowing where they stand. But the one who tolerates ambiguity forces the other party to define the position. Definition is investment. Investment shifts control. Surgical detachment is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming stable under pressure. Stability under pressure makes you difficult to move, and what cannot be easily moved commands respect. This is where control starts to feel effortless, because you are no longer fighting for it. You are simply not leaking it.
Understand this clearly. If you do not master this, someone else will master you. Neediness does not disappear with age. It evolves. It hides inside marriage, inside business partnerships, inside social circles. It disguises itself as responsibility, as loyalty, as being a good man. But beneath the disguise, the mechanism remains the same. Emotional dependency creates negotiability. Negotiability invites control. You think the stakes are small because you imagine this only applies to dating. It does not. It applies to every arena where perception determines hierarchy. In corporate rooms, the man who needs the promotion more bends first. In partnerships, the man who fears conflict concedes first. In relationships, the man who fears loss invests beyond balance first. The pattern is identical, and patterns scale. If you remain approval dependent, you will build a life shaped by subtle concessions, small compromises, gradual adjustments, each one minor in isolation, catastrophic in accumulation. You will wake up inside structures you did not design, controlled not by force, but by your own fear of disapproval. This is how most men lose sovereignty, not through dramatic defeat, through incremental compliance. The world does not punish neediness loudly, it rewards it quietly, until you are replaceable. Because here is the ruthless truth. The marketplace selects for stability. Emotionally volatile men are tolerated when useful. Emotionally dependent men are entertained when convenient. Emotionally sovereign men are respected consistently. Respect is the only sustainable currency of power, and respect cannot coexist with visible desperation. This is your final audit. Where do you still seek reassurance? Where do you still overextend to secure approval? Where do you still fear being misunderstood more than being undervalued? Those are the remaining fractures. Seal them. Do not announce the shift. Do not posture. Do not declare detachment theatrically. Simply withdraw the excess. Withdraw the chasing. Withdraw the explaining. Withdraw the over-investing. Replace it with observation. Replace it with pacing. Replace it with internal certainty that loss is survivable. You do not need to become ruthless. You need to become unmoved. When you are unmoved, your presence carries weight. Your silence carries tension. Your withdrawal carries consequence. That is influence without force. This is the doctrine. Desire without dependency. Investment without desperation. Presence without pursuit. If you adopt this fully, you will notice something subtle but irreversible. People lean in more. They test less. They invest earlier. Not because you demanded it, because you stopped leaking need. Kill neediness, and you remove the only lever most people ever had over you. The rest is gravity.